know a lot of you in the manifesting community are extremely frustrated and upset because a lot of you continue to affirm, and say these affirmations with no results. I'm here to tell you that the great Emile Coue, the French psychologist, he had the answers to why affirmations don't work way back in the late 1800s to the early 1900s. Now, this guy was a predecessor, obviously, if you listen to the time frame, to Neville. He was a predecessor to greats like Napoleon Hill. Whether it's Neville, whether it's Emile Coue, whether it's Florence Scovel Shinn, whether it's other people right now currently in this generation that are teaching this stuff has been passed down from generation to generation. But Emile Coue had the secret, just as Neville had the secret, to why a lot of times these affirmations don't work, why persisting in your affirmations don't work. And here's the simple answer. Coue simply states that when the imagination and your willpower are in conflict, your imagination will win 100% of the time without exception. Let's unpack this for a second. I've constantly said this in multiple of my videos if you've been following me for some time now. I constantly state to people that your ego and your heart are constantly at war. What we can do with what Coue just said is replace the word imagination and will with ego and heart, or mind, ego, and heart, and we can say the same exact thing. The difficult thing about life is, in my opinion, it's so nuanced. I know a lot of these teachings try to tell you, oh, it's so easy, all you got to do is this, oh, all you got to do is affirm. Listen, if it was that easy, everybody in their mom would be walking around here successful. Everybody in their mom would be having a dream life that they want, dream house, dream car, dream relationship, dream everything. But obviously, based on results, we know that it's not as easy as some LOA teachers may say. Yes, it is easy in theory. Yes, it is easy in principle. But as we know, applying it and consistently applying it is two different things. We have to get to a point to where we can understand when to use our minds, when to use our egos versus when to use our hearts, and when to use that together with willpower in conjunction. Because as Greg Braden always talks about, he's the one, in my opinion, that has coined the term brain-heart coherence. He said this many years ago. Now, obviously, anybody that has been studying this stuff for some time knows that Dr. Joe Dispenza is the guy who basically has taken the term brain-heart coherence and used it in his teachings of what he does in working with people all around the world. And essentially, brain-heart coherence is exactly what Emile Coue is talking about when getting the mind and the heart to work together, when being able to affirm something and to be able to speak, and whenever you say to that mountain move, that mountain must move. But first, getting into coherence, heart, brain, that's one of the key first steps. It's very difficult because listening to yourself, you just never know. And you say to yourself out loud or internally, am I making this decision with my heart? Am I making this decision with my head? Which way do I go? Do I go left? Do I go right? If I do go left, or if I do go right, is that my heart making the decision, or is that my head making the decision? So again, it's very nuanced. Emile Coue did a great job at explaining how to retrain your subconscious mind and get through all of the technical details so that your subconscious mind can be impressed, so that your beliefs can change and that you can become a new person. Because anybody that studies Emile Coue knows that he quite famously came up with the saying, day by day, every day, in every way, I am getting better and better. But he had a certain way that he had to do it in order for people to heal and to get better, because people weren't just saying that affirmation constantly throughout the day. You hear a lot of these people in these LOA communities, whatever platform you're on, you hear a lot of these people say things like, all you got to do is affirm. But I think a lot of these people affirm 24/7, and I think a lot of them are extremely miserable. I think they're tired. I think they turn affirming into a job. I think they look at it like if they're not affirming all the time, that they're in lack somehow, and that somehow they're going to mess up their manifestation if they're not in affirming mode 24/7. And that's just simply not the truth, because in my opinion, nobody should be affirming 24/7. And what I'm getting ready to tell you about how Emile Coue did it, he simply did not have any of his subjects quoting anything for that long, for 24/7. Emile Coue did a great job at explaining how your imagination will always trump whatever is coming out of your mouth. However much you affirm, you can affirm whatever it is. And he did a great job at explaining this by using the analogy of walking on a steel beam from side to side. Now, what Emile says in his book, Power of Autosuggestion, he states that if you place a beam on the ground and you walk across that beam from one side, let's just say you're in a room and the room is 15 feet by 15 feet, and you place that beam on the ground and you walk across that beam, you can do it, no problem. No problem at all. You can walk across that beam. You can will yourself to walk across that skinny beam, no problem. But he said, now take that same beam and place that up on top of 2 skyscrapers. Think about any other skyscrapers that are around. Think about taking a small beam and placing that beam from one building to the other side of the building, and then think about yourself trying to walk all the way across that beam. When you think about it, in theory, you think to yourself, yeah, I can do it. Now, doing this exercise, do you see how hard it is to get your will and your imagination to get on the same page? Because as soon as you imagine taking that beam out of a room and walking across it, to imagining putting that beam on top of 2 skyscrapers and walking across it, do you see that feeling you get? Do you feel how your heart kind of like sinks? Do you feel how that feeling and your imagination starts to go crazy and you're like, oh, I would never walk over top of those buildings. I would never walk from side to side, because you're imagining something and your imagination is overpowering your will. No matter how much you try to will yourself to walk straight across those beams, because it's easy, right? Nothing has changed except the height. The beam is exactly the same. The distance is probably exactly the same to walk across the beam. But the only thing that has changed really is the height. And now, because the height is changed, now your feelings and emotions and your imagination about the situation change. And so now you're scared, you're living in fear. You're like, oh, I could walk on this beam when this beam was only right here on this floor in the building that I'm in. But now if we move this beam to a different height, now I get scared all of a sudden. This also, in my opinion, has a lot to do with your pre-programming and being afraid of certain things, being afraid of heights. This could easily go back to why it's important to work on those different beliefs that a person may have, because when you're faced with certain things like this, now this is when those demons come out of the closet. So if you already had a fear of heights, now that you're on top of this beam and you have to walk across it, now these fears that you've never dealt with, they're coming back to the surface. This is a great example, in my opinion, of why it's always important to do the work. Because I know another thing is that a lot of these manifestation people, or people that follow manifestation, it might not be teachers necessarily, but when I used to look in a bunch of groups, I used to see people saying things like, no, you don't need to do shadow work. You don't need to go back and heal this. You don't need to go back and heal anything. All you got to do is live in the end. I think that's some of the most toxic advice out there, because first of all of us are different. Second of all, I think it's important to have every single form of arsenal that you can. Whatever weapons you have in your arsenal, I think you should have all of that and be able to utilize all of that. Something that I think about real quick off the top of my head, I think about people in wars. I think about people fighting. When you're in the army, or if you're fighting a war, you don't want to just have one gun. You want to have access to multiple guns. You want to have access to multiple versions of different guns. You don't want to just have a handgun. You want to have semi-automatics. You want to have machine guns. You want to have tanks. You want to be able to drop bombs. All of these things are doing the same thing. They're helping you defend yourself, defend whatever you're defending, and they're helping take out the opposition. But there are different methods. So use bombs when you need to use bombs. Use army tanks when you need to use the army tanks. Use the handgun when you need to use the handgun. Use the machine gun when you need to use the machine gun. You guys see where I'm going with this? This is why I think it's important for us to utilize all of the ways that we can and not be so blinded on one way in this law of attraction manifestation stuff, because you never know when you're going to be able to utilize these tools. You never know when you're going to need to take out scripting. You never know when you're going to need to take out visualization. You never know when you're going to need to take out living in the end. You never know when you're going to need to take out affirmations. So all of these are just different tools you can have in your arsenal to use when you're ready to use them. And so you want to have these tools ready for when you're facing these trials and tribulations, for when these trials and tribulations, when they come up, like the example I just gave you about walking across the high beam. If you never dealt with that fear of heights before, you need to have an arsenal that comes up to be able to deal with that fear of heights. Just like with a specific person, if you're trying to manifest, for instance, a specific person, you want to have tools in your toolbox to be able to deal with your specific person issues when they come up, instead of just living in the end, because you got to be able to maintain your manifestation once you get it. And I think that's something that a lot of us think about. A lot of us, we think about when we get our manifestations, there's also another part to it. What does that come with? That doesn't come with simply just living in the end. You can live in the end and say, I have the most beautiful relationship ever, and live in the end of that feeling and then attract the most beautiful relationship ever. But guess what? What's going to happen when that relationship starts to turn sour, right? What's going to happen when your specific person leaves you on red for whatever reason? What's going to happen when your specific person makes plans without you and does X, Y, and Z without you when you wanted them to invite you? What's going to happen to you when your specific person doesn't call you or text you at the exact time they said they were going to text you and call you back? What's going to happen? Where's your mind going to go? How is your imagination going to take over no matter how much you're trying to will it? Like we're talking about in this video, how much is your imagination going to take over? So this is something I want you guys to think about, because too many times I see people focusing on getting something, but you also got to do the work. And doing the work is, like I said, having a bunch of different weapons in your arsenal to be able to keep that person. So when your specific person doesn't text you, when your specific person doesn't call you, they don't invite you out to that thing, how are you going to react? Is your imagination going to take over? Your imagination is going to automatically go to, they might be talking to somebody else. Oh my God, my specific person didn't answer. They must be with such and such. They could be out with that guy. They could be out with that girl. Whatever the situation may be, this is why doing certain work and going back and potentially healing the past or doing whatever you have to do, this is why this is so important, so that when these moments come up during your perfect relationship, because they will come up. Don't let these YouTubers and everybody out here fool you. No, it don't work like that. It's not that easy. Anybody that has attracted a partner, a dream partner, I guarantee you they still go through arguments. I guarantee they still have spots in their relationship where they're not on the same page 100% of the time. So don't think for 1 second that once you get your person back, you guys are never going to argue. You guys are never going to fight. You guys are never going to have disagreements. All of this stuff is BS, is not true, because any LOA teacher that I've seen that is doing big things, whether it's Abraham Hicks, whether it's Tony Robbins, whether it's some of these other big time guys that were in the movie The Secret, these people still have problems in their own relationships. But the thing that I noticed is these people have the tools in their toolbox to be able to handle these problems when these problems show up in their relationship. They know they're going to happen, but when you don't have the tools that you need in your toolbox and you just think that, oh, all I got to do is live in the end because that's what Neville said. No, to me, that's erroneous thinking. It's idiotic thinking to me to think that all you literally need to do is live in the end and think that, oh, I'm going to have this perfect relationship. No, because like I said, what's going to happen at one time when your SP does something and it reminds you of a past relationship you were in? It reminds you of something that you never got over. How are you going to react? What kind of emotions and feelings are going to come up to the surface? This is why a lot of times doing the past work and shadow work, etc., may be necessary. Not for everybody, but for some people. Back to the example with the beam, as I stated, there's no brain-heart coherence for you to actually will yourself to walk across the beam, because if somebody has brain-heart coherence and they're really not afraid, they can will themselves to walk across that beam to go across to the other side. But because, like I said, there's no brain-heart coherence, meaning what Emile Coue said, your imagination is overpowering the will, your imagination is going to win every time. The fear that's going on in your head about, oh, the height changing, the circumstances change now, that's going to overpower however much you try to will yourself to take that first step. Because you take that first step and you're like, oh no, I'm kind of scared, because your imagination is at work. And this is exactly what happens when we try to manifest anything in our lives. This is exactly when we try to go spend money on something and we look at our bank accounts and we see like, oh man, I don't have the money in my bank account. I'm afraid to even spend $5, $10. Why? Because our imagination is overriding our willpower, because we can easily spend the money. Money's there, it's in your account. But our imaginations are taking over and saying to us, oh man, if I spend $10 on this, I spend $100 on this, I might not have money for, from 2 days from now, 3 days from now, when I have to go to X, Y, and Z and take care of X, Y, and Z. So I better not spend this $10 or this $20 or this $50. I better not do that. I better just keep it and save. And so your imagination is winning, because your brain wants to buy X, Y, and Z and spend X, Y, and Z, but your imagination is placing so much fear. And this is why the cycle continues to perpetuate time and time and time again. It's because your imagination, all of the fake scenarios that come up in your head about why you shouldn't do something, that always triumphs. Which brings me to my next point. Affirming almost always never works for people, because people are the problem. And what I mean by people are the problem, whoever the one that's doing the affirming, the problem is that most times we are the ones that's in a rush. I want you guys to always remember this. The universe is never in a rush. We are always the ones in the rush. We are always the ones that need to have it by this date, this second, No, not a second later. And this is where the problems come in, because that's where anxiety comes from. Anxiety comes from us not being patient, us blaming the universe when it's not the universe's fault or it's not somebody else's fault. It's our fault because we don't have the patience. And this causes us to quit because we don't see results on our timeline. One of the biggest problems I see with people that affirm, they say things like, I've been affirming for, this long and it's not working. I've been affirming for 2 weeks and I still haven't got what I want. I've been affirming for a month. I've been affirming for 2 months, 6 months. It's not working. The universe is never on the timeline. We are. Life is a marathon, not a sprint. We keep trying to sprint through our affirmations and we keep trying to sprint through everything. You guys have religiously heard me say in some of my videos, if you've been following me, how we live in a microwave generation where we just want to put our manifestation, we want to put whatever we want in the microwave and press 30, and then we want it to pop out like it's popcorn, Orville Redenbacher's. It's just not how it works for most people. Again, some people are on that level to where they can say things, speak things, and they can quickly show up. But in my experience dealing with people, a lot of times it's not that simple. So I'm here to give you guys easy, real life examples of how this is probably gonna go for a lot of you guys that's watching these videos. And I know you don't like to hear it, tough toenails. Something I want you to remember is you gotta hold on to faith. And the way you hold on to faith is by realizing that whatever the opposition isn't real. I read this question from somebody who left a comment on a video, and it said, like, how do you keep the faith when you're facing the opposition, when you're going through something? Keep the faith by understanding that whatever opposition you're facing, understand it isn't real. It's created by your mind. As they always say, you've probably heard a lot of times in your past, fear isn't real. It's an illusion. But you're giving into the illusion, and the illusion of fear is making it seem more real than it really is. But if you take a step back and look at your situation, you'll realize that, oh shoot, this actually isn't really that bad of a situation that I'm in. My mind is telling me that it's that bad though. I forget what philosopher it was. I don't remember if it was Seneca or one of these Greek philosophers or someone back from, hundreds, thousands of years ago, whenever it was. There was a saying that said something like, oftentimes we suffer more in imagination than we do in real life. And again, that statement is so true, because a lot of times our minds, again, the whole point of this video is will versus imagination. Our minds create scenes and make scenes worse than they really actually are. And we do this time and time again, which makes it harder to affirm. We always have to remain consistent and understand that just because something is this way today, right now, does not mean that it is going to be that way tomorrow, or that way next week, or that way next month, that way next year, etc. As I said earlier, life is 100% a marathon. It is not a sprint. If you don't get something today, if you don't get something next week, next month, next year, that doesn't mean the game is over. The game ends when you're not on Earth anymore. And even then, you're probably gonna be reincarnated and a new game is gonna start. Who knows where you're gonna go or what's gonna happen. So understand, as long as you're alive, understand you have time. You have time to rewrite your story. Understand you're going in the right direction as long as you continue to persist and do the work, and especially the work, what I'm getting ready to get into you right now with what Emile Coue says and how to do it. If Emile Coue was alive today, he would probably, in my opinion, he would be laughing at most of us if he were to see how much we go through life affirming. Oh, my specific person is constantly texting me. My specific person is madly in love with me. My specific person is obsessed with me. Emile Coue would just laugh, and he would probably tell you immediately, stop doing that. You don't need to affirm 100,000 times in one day, or whatever the number is that you're affirming. What Emile Coue would do, simply, he would get his patients to get into that state akin to sleep, as Neville talks about, or even sleep itself, right? Because we all know how fertile the mind is right before sleep, during sleep, and when you wake up from being asleep. He would basically stand a few feet from the edge of the bed, and he would repeat to the subjects over and over again whatever the chant was, whether it was every day in every way, I am getting better and better, or if the patient was sick, or whatever the case might have been, because a myriad of people were cured and helped by Emile Coue from his autosuggestion and putting people in a hypnosis state. So that's the whole key, in my opinion. Instead of affirming 100,000 times throughout the day, I mean, if it feels good to you and you like it, go ahead and do it. Who am I to tell you to stop doing it? But if you don't want to affirm 200 times one day or whatever the number is, simply do it throughout the day when you're in those states akin to sleep, because you can be in the state akin to sleep throughout the day, because all the state akin to sleep means is you're at a time where you're relaxed. Simply all that means. So anytime you're relaxed throughout the day, you're getting ready to take a nap, or you might be at the office relaxing on break, or you might be at home just relaxing on the couch, or you might be in the bathroom on the toilet. Those are the great times that you want to say, okay, now I'm going to say a couple of affirmations. I'm going to take a deep breath. Say every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. Or now is a good time, I'm going to do a quick visualization. Or now is a quick time, I'm going to affirm for my specific person. And so if you do it this way, this alleviates you having to think that I got to say this a lot of times in the next 24 hours, or I got to keep up this routine over the next week. Because as I said in past videos, I don't want you guys to turn this manifesting stuff into a job, because from what I'm seeing from a lot of people is a lot of you guys are turning this manifestation stuff into a job, and you're not having fun with it. This stuff is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to feel like a job. This is why always, in my opinion, I think it's very great to have some sort of coach, some sort of person holding your hand or holding you accountable of what is it that you're doing? What is your daily routine? What are you working on? Have you been consistent? Have you been slacking off and taking 2 weeks off? This is why it's so important to me to have like a mental coach, whether it's myself or whether it's another person, to hold your hand and to hold you accountable. And I think a lot more of us, we just need this for repetition. We need this because it's no different than going to the gym. When people go to the gym and they lift weights to train their muscles, to make their muscles tone, to make their muscles get big. But guess what happens when they stop going to the gym? They lose their muscles, they lose their definition, they lose their tone. So in my opinion, the same thing happens with this LOA stuff. When you don't have somebody holding your hand, keeping you accountable with your techniques, with your consistency, with your development, you lose track. You no longer do your sats, your states akin to sleep. You no longer do your affirmations. Next thing you know, you look up, it is 2-3 months gone by and you haven't done any visualizations or anything. And then you come to videos and you wonder why you haven't gotten anything. Well, I can tell you why you didn't get anything is because you didn't keep your routine going that you had going for a little bit. You stopped, you fell off, you got back to the old habits, because it's so easy to go back to the old habits who we have habitually been for however many years we've been on earth, which again is why it's important to have somebody be able to hold your hand and hold you accountable. This is no different than professional athletes. Why do professional athletes have coaches? Even though they're professional athletes, when you're in the game focused on certain things, there's plays you miss. A lot of times when we're in the game, it's hard to see the mistakes that we're making, right? So this is why, again, this is the analogy of sports. This is the analogy with lifting weights. This is why I believe personally it is extremely important for many of us to have coaches to hold our hands and guide us, because it's extremely hard to wake up and do like Paul said. There was a scripture in the Bible, Paul, he talks about dying daily, die daily. And basically what he means like that is dying daily means you have to basically remember, okay, this day I have to renew myself. I have to renew my thoughts. I have to renew who I'm trying to be, because I'm not this old person that I was yesterday. I'm not that old person that I was last week or last month or last year or 5 years ago, whatever the case may be. It sounds easy in theory, the term die daily, as Paul said, and I think Neville might have mentioned this as well. It's not as easy in principle to commit and to consistently die daily. This is why, like I'm saying, it's good to have somebody hold your hand so that they can hold you accountable and remind you must die daily. You must die to the old version of you, which is essentially the same thing as Neville saying you must revise your past, because all sins are the cause of the unrevised scenes of the past, as Neville says.